If you know anything about me, you know how much I like the Rance series. I talk about it a lot, to an annoying degree. Having recently finished Rance 10 and completing the series, I felt empty. I decided I needed to go through the entire series again and share my passion for it with this retrospective. I intend to cover every game, plus other related Alisoft games like Toshin Toshi and Mama Toto. I will go in-depth about each entry, talking about story, gameplay, lore, themes, and whatever else comes to mind. Naturally, there will be spoilers, so I wouldn't recommend watching unless you've played the games already or don't care. Before I discuss Rance, I must go through the true beginning of the series, Little Princess and Little Vampire. Stories that weren't originally intended to be part of a greater franchise, but the way they're retroactively added to the lore is fascinating. Little Princess is an adventure visual novel released in 1986 by Championsoft, the company that would later become Alisoft. An interesting tidbit about this is that Little Princess is apparently a port or soft reboot of an even older Championsoft game called Kidnapped Mickey-chan. There is no translation of this, of course, but it seems like Mickey didn't have her trademark pink hair until Little Princess. The intro tells you everything you need to know about the story. Kentaro is on a date with his girlfriend Mickey, when suddenly Dracula himself comes out of a portal and takes Mickey. Kentaro, not wanting to be cucked by Dracula, gives chase. Gotta respect Kentaro for going through a strange portal and picking a fight with Dracula for his girl. Then you're thrown into the game, as lost as Kentaro himself. This is a text adventure game where you have to input commands to do anything. For instance, saying go north to move north. There's a very limited number of commands you can do. The real difficulty of the game lies in figuring out what to do, as the sequence of events you need to do things in is practically nonsensical. For this reason, it's highly advised to use a guide, as figuring things out yourself is more of a headache than it's worth. An annoying thing about the gameplay, as basic as it is that the game cannot handle you typing fast and it will not be able to read your inputs. The art is obviously amateurish, but what can you expect? It does have a certain unnerving quality that makes the game feel more unsettling than it is. One thing I've always wondered is who's the woman on the side of the screen? She doesn't have pink hair, so it can't be Mickey. There's no one in the game that even resembles her. Maybe a gender-bent Kentaro? Anyway, Kentaro wanders around trying to find Dracula's castle. Early on, you should find a Himari lemon, a fruit that's immensely important in Rance. So seeing her appear this early is neat. One of the more odd parts of the story is where Kentaro encounters a girl that looks exactly like Mickey. She manages to trap Dracula in his coffin by placing a cross on top of it. This random girl outsmarts Dracula, even knows the spell to defeat him for some reason. Dracula is kind of incompetent here, huh? Then there's the part where Kentaro murders a woman by throwing an axe into a pond. Doesn't even react to it. Kentaro is cold-blooded. Guess saving Mickey-chan takes priority over all else. You go in a house and find a girl who has been isekai'd to this world. After giving her a cross, she takes her own life in the most unhinged moment in the game. This somehow takes Kentaro to Dracula's castle. In the castle, there's an optional encounter with Dracula's daughter. She asks for a Himari lemon. There's no reason to actually give her the lemon, so Kentaro leaves, but when he returns, she's unconscious and naked. This is random, but amusing when you realize the character was turned into Hornet. With that out of the way, Kentaro makes his way to Dracula's coffin. He frees Dracula and defeats him by saying Pom Pom. That's kind of anticlimactic. Better if in Castlevania, Simon Belmont said Pom Pom and Dracula exploded for some reason. It'd be a very different series. With Dracula defeated, Mickey is freed from the mirror she was trapped in, but the two have no way home and are stuck in this fantasy world. That's how the game ends. Little Princess is bizarre and insane, but makes a bit more sense when you realize that the game cobbled together of reused assets. Doesn't excuse how unfun it is to play, but it makes it understandable. Little Vampire is a sequel released in 1988, immediately following where Little Vampire left off. The prologue is basically a complete remake of the first game, giving more context for the relationship between Kentaro and Mickey. Here, Kentaro is given a sword and slices his way to Dracula's castle. No Pom Pom here, Kentaro just cuts Dracula down. Now onto the game itself. It's an immediate, massive improvement over Little Princess. The art, while still somewhat dated, it looks more pleasing than Little Princess. There's actual music now, and it's decent for what it is. Gone is having to input commands, now you navigate a menu. Still basically the same gameplay, wandering around, picking things up and talking to people, but I prefer this approach. With how you can only get certain items during certain times in the game, you can accidentally make it impossible to complete if you don't know what you're doing. It's a thing a lot of old adventure games did, so I can't exactly fault it for doing the same. What does get incredibly annoying is the constant back and forth you have to do, going between the limited locations. And an early example is when Kentaro needs to help a ghost pass on. So, he finds this bizarre bread ghost guy near a river, but he can't talk to him, so he heads back to town to get to the drugstore to get medicine that'll make it so he can communicate with the ghost. Go back to the river, and now you have to find his grave. Go to the graveyard, and he realizes he doesn't know the name of the ghost. So he goes back to the river, asks his name, go back to the graveyard, find his grave, he passes on, but he needs to get to the recipe book, which is back at the river. It doesn't take long to get from one place to another, but it gets tiresome, especially when all these steps feel like unnecessary padding, should easily be cut down. I guess things like this are a staple of adventure games, so maybe the genre just isn't for me. Now, for the story itself, it's leagues ahead of Little Princess. There's an actual semi-logical series of events that you have to follow. They gave more personality to Kentaro and Mickey, who barely had anything resembling such a Little Princess. Some of what they say can be amusing and make trudging through the game worthwhile, so the story centers around Kentaro and Mickey trying to find their way back to their world. They don't make much progress in the first act, but they do meet up with a fortune teller named Arcee, an important character in the Rance lore. They eventually find their way to a hermit living in the clouds. He doesn't have a way to get them home, but he gives information about Dracula and how vampires work. Vampires here have a lifespan of 400 years before they need to find a successor. Male successors are called Dracula, while females are called Little Princess. At the end of the first act, it's revealed that Mickey is a vampire, meaning that Dracula transferred his power to her. She's now Little Princess, the Little Vampire, hence the name of these games. Now the goal for Kentaro had shifted from simply getting home, also trying to find a way to cure her of vampirism. The second act is much shorter than the first. Kentaro and Mickey find a giant eyeball on top of a waterfall, something that might look familiar if you've played Divenical. They kill it with eye drops, which unseals the waterfall goddess. She tells them of the purification fruit, also known as the Hirami lemon, which will supposedly cure Mickey. When they reach the location where it's located, they're ambushed by Ramon C. Brooksam, who wants Mickey to fully awaken as Little Princess and rule over the monsters. Ramon is an interesting case because he is the first Dark Lord, or as they're called in official translations, Fiend, shown in the series, but this is a detail added later. I wish he made an appearance in the Rance series in some form. He is mentioned, but I would like to see how a modern interpretation of his character would interact with Mickey. Seems like one of the benevolent fiends, so it's a shame we never get to see more of him. Anyway, he takes Mickey and knocks Kentaro out. This marks the start of the final act. Kentaro wakes up, rescued by the farmer girl he helped earlier. There is a funny bad end here where Kentaro can give up on Mickey and marry her instead. I guess she's kinda cute, but I can't believe Kentaro would do this. Kentaro seeks out the hermit again, who tells him Mickey is being kept in a tower of evil, that'll corrupt her and awaken her as Little Princess. He also speaks of a certain machine that's there, which should be able to transport Kentaro and Mickey back to Japan. Two birds with one stone, huh? Kentaro goes to this tower, where he has his final showdown with Ramon. Kentaro summons a sea of blood, which drowns Ramon. This is the last we'll see of him. At least it's pretty rad. Kentaro finds Mickey, but she's corrupted by the tower and can't even recognize him. Kentaro is nearly defeated by Mickey, but is able to take out the old guy controlling her, which allows her to regain her senses. I actually like this final encounter. Mickey looks extremely cool with the cloak, which will even be brought back in Rance whenever she transforms into the Little Princess. The two of them find the machine that's able to transport them back home, but before that, Kentaro has to remember to give Mickey the purification fruit. They return home, finally able to live peacefully. Unfortunately, Rance retcons this happy ending, so they're still trapped in the continent after all these ordeals, but it's a nice ending. Now you might ask what all this has to do with Rance. Let me explain. Of course Dracula doesn't exist in Rance, it's actually Demon King Guy, or in the official translation, Archfiend Guy. Kentaro mistakes him for Dracula because he looks scary and Kentaro is kind of dumb. Guy is the current Archfiend, but he's nearing the end of his reign. Remember what the old hermit said about the lifespan of Dracula? This holds true for Archfiends as well, except instead of lasting for 400 years, they live for 1,000 years. They are nigh invincible, supreme beings that rule over monsters. They are so important that eras are marked by what Archfiends reign during them. Guy is nearing that 1,000 year limit and is searching for a successor. He tried his daughter Hornet, but she was not compatible with his power. Desperate, he goes to another world and abducts Mickey. He's able to successfully transfer his power before she is rescued by Kentaro. Kentaro kills him, marking the end to the Guy era and the beginning of the Little Princess era. This is the era where the Rance games take place, and it sets up one of the major conflicts of the series. With Mickey running away from her position as Archfiend, it leaves a power gap in the monster realm, which some fiends might try to exploit. There are other traces of how Little Princess inspired things in Rance, like how Archfiends work. I already mentioned the lifespan, but a lot about them is vampiric in nature, even if they're not literally vampires. They have blood control, thirst for blood, and the shared memories from blood. Then there's Archfiend Nagisa, who is very Dracula-like. The fiends Kesselring and Isol also take a lot from Dracula. Tata or someone at Alisoft must love Bram Stoker. With how much I've mocked these games, you probably think I hate them, but I have an odd appreciation for them. As mentioned, I do like how they inadvertently started the Rance series. Kentaro and Mickey will become some of my favorite characters, but that's more because of how they are in Sengoku and 10. Playing them might be a tedious chore, but they're short enough where I can't completely hate them. It's why I still try to recommend people play them, if they have an interest in Rance. Playing this, and then witnessing how these ideas and characters are refined later, is fascinating. Well, that's it for this video. This is but a prelude for what's to come, much like these games themselves. Things will get a lot more interesting once I start covering the actual Rance series. Tune in next time for when I talk about the beginning of the grand adventure, Rance 1, Quest for Hikaru. Thanks for watching.